أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد أما بعد. Okay, alhamdulillah. So we have made a start with our first matan in the Islamic studies program. The first text we did was a general introduction to Islamic etiquettes relevant to seeking knowledge, right? We have finished a text before this, so this is not technically the treatise number 1 in this program, but it is the first treatise that concerns the knowledge base, right? The first text we did was more about learning the general etiquettes of talib al-ilm, of a student of knowledge. Tamam? So in our program, the first text that we're going to be targeting, as everyone knows, is titled Durus al-Muhimmah li'ammatil Ummah. Li'ammatil Ummah. And we've already explained the title and its importance, and the author who wrote this, Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah, and his importance in our history, in the Islamic heritage of the last century. And so alhamdulillah, we've had a couple of durus as a muqaddimat, right, as introductions to this text already, alhamdulillah. So since this text, as we explained, is targeted for the laymen, for the general masses, the general public, not for the tulab al-ilm, who are senior, who have studied some basics. And most of our students, in fact, pretty much all of our students, are essentially at that level right now. We're just making a start in our journey, right? So this text talks about all the important knowledge that every Muslim must know, right? So we've talked about this in much detail, alhamdulillah, and we said that the first thing that is taught to the public when you start to work in the field of da'wah is the Quran, right? Teaching them the short surahs of the Quran. Engaging people through the Quran is the first step. The Prophet ﷺ used to do tazkiyah of the Sahaba, of the Ummah, the first Ummah, the first generation of this Ummah, with the Quran, right? This is the first level, the first stage of da'wah. And since our program is a da'i program, we're supposed to make you, inshaAllah, du'at upon the manhaj of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. The first thing that we must learn and then inshallah teach to our communities is the Quran, right? So the Shaykh rahimahullah, keeping that in mind, he has structured this book in a very nice way, starting from the most important thing for the general masses, and then moving towards things which are, sort of moving down this hierarchy of knowledge that is required by the general Muslims. Tamam, alhamdulillah. So we have already talked about the fact that when we deal with the Muslims in general, we don't assume them to be kuffar, or of course we know that shirk is prevalent in the ummah and so on and so forth, but the asl is that anyone who has recited the shahadatain, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, anyone who has recited this particular kalima with the right intention, of course we can't judge the intentions, but if someone has recited them and his sincerity is on what is apparent to us, it seems legit, then their Islam is acceptable. And this is the asl. Their Islam is to be accepted, and that is the principle. That is the foundation of our deen. Anyone who pronounces the shahadatain and he appears to be sincere, we accept their faith, we accept their Islam. Okay? After that, if the person seems to contradict what he has confessed to in the shahadatain, we can educate them. We can tell them about where the wrong that they are indulged in, they are engaged in. Okay? Of course, the people who are giving da'wah in the first place should inform people when they give them da'wah about the true Islam. They shouldn't change Islam just to fit Islam to someone's taste buds, right? Islam is to be swallowed, digested as a whole, and it is to be taken in as a whole. It cannot be given in parts. Islam, when we say in terms of its message, it's tawheed, submission to Allah Azza wa Jal, and believing in everything Allah Azza wa Jal has sent down, and following to the best of our ability His commandments, and staying away from His prohibitions, right? Not everyone is going to be able to follow everything from day one. Of course, there are going to be lapses and deficiencies. That is all fine. But at the first level, the shahada is a confession that yes, I will submit to Allah as much as I can. So we accept, inshallah, from anyone who has recited the shahadatain that they are Muslims and they were sincere when they said it, and they have committed to submitting to Allah as much as possible. Now, there might be gaps in knowledge, as was the case with the Sahaba, and the Prophet ﷺ educated them over the course of 23 years, subhanAllah. And we likewise assume the same for the Ummah, right? So we accept the Shahadatain. We assume when we engage with Muslims, they are all Muslims, and we must bring them towards Islam by engaging them with the Quran. So the Shaykh, the first lesson, he starts off with his book titled Durus Muhimmah li'ammat al-Ummah, is learning short surahs of the Quran. Okay, and specifically the Surah Al-Fatiha, Surah Al-Fatiha, and then Surah Zilzalah, until the end of the Quran, Surah An-Nas. Okay, we've already talked about in much detail why this choice and why the Shaykh thinks this is the good manhaj to teach the general masses, based on the principle of getting someone's commitment to the lowest thing they can commit to, and giving them this kind of motivation to only do one thing at a time, right? And tell them, look, Islam is easy. Make Islam easy for them, and then bring them towards a common ground where they have studied something, they've tasted something, and then they have developed this eagerness and motivation to study more, right? If they're so far away and distant from the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal, they don't even practice, they don't even pray, like you can't expect them to become huffaz. So with the general Muslims, we have to keep in mind the principle ad-dinu yusrun, or as the hadith says, yassiru wa la tu'assiru, make it easy on the people, do not make it difficult, right? This is the principle when it comes to dealing with the people. As far as we can make it easy for the people in terms of letting them accept Islam, and then keep motivating them to stay practicing, for example, and so on and so forth, whatever we can do, staying within the bounds of our Sharia, we should make the religion as easy for them as possible. So we've talked about this in much detail in the previous lesson, alhamdulillah. So just as a reminder, when you engage with your communities, inshallah, you have to make a point of telling them, look, the deen of Allah is easy. There's not much to learn in terms of your requirements, right? If you just learn these handful of surahs, this 15, 16 surahs, inshallah, just memorize them, or even just one surah if you can memorize it and understand its meanings, and read it properly, inshallah, Allah Azza wa Jal will accept it from you, and you will be from the saved people on the Day of Judgment, and you will enter Jannah, inshallah. And then you can tell them about the narrations that have come. These narrations, we've talked about them in the last session, and they're also mentioned in the commentary that I've shared with you. Inshallah, when you guys are able to read that commentary, and when you engage with your communities and with these texts, you can, inshallah, you can read through those things again. So that was just a recap as to why the Shaykh chose these short surahs. Tamam. We briefly touched on the at-ta'awudh, or as another word for it would be al-isti'adha, in the previous lesson. And we said we will be taking the first two sentences, so the isti'adha and then al-basmala. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and then before that, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So these two sentences we're going to look at in somewhat detail, inshallah, and then moving forwards beyond that, We'll make it simple, inshallah, make it less detailed and as relevant to the point, at least for this stage of your journey, as possible, inshallah. طيب? Okay. So, التعوذ or al-isti'adha. طيب, I've written a Z, but you don't say ta'awuz or isti'aza. That's wrong. It's a dha. It's a dhal. Say dhal, right? So you would say at-ta'awuz and al-isti'adha. Al-isti'adha. Okay? Al-isti'adha. طيب, that's just to make sure that you pronounce the words correctly. طيب, inshallah. What does these two words mean? So, ta'awudh or isti'adha, of course they have linguistic differences because of the different pronunciation, the different form. But generally what you're doing is you're asking for Allah's refuge. Right? You're seeking the protection and refuge from Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay, so if you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, you have essentially sought Allah's protection and you've come under Allah's refuge from the potential whispers and harm of the shaitan. Okay? That's the first thing. So when you are saying A'udhu Billah or you're saying Isti'adha, you are seeking the refuge of the one whose refuge is the ultimate refuge. And when you seek his protection, his protection is the ultimate protection. So when you come under Allah's protection and Allah's refuge, and you seek that from him, there's no way that Allah will not grant that for you, or not grant that to you. Okay? Now, both of these ends are extreme, subhanAllah. On one end, you're seeking the highest protection and the highest refuge, and you're seeking it against the greatest enemy that you have as a human being and as a Muslim, the shaitan. Okay? So Imam Al-Hafiz Ibn Kathir rahmallah, in his Tafsir Ibn Kathir, the famous Tafsir, he says, Al-Isti'adha is asking for help from Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? It's a kind of a dua. Okay? Isti'adha is a dua. It's asking for help of Allah Azza wa Jal, i.e. saying in this way, which is, I ask for protection from Allah, A'udhu Billah, from his other creations. All of his other creations, other than myself, from among the shayateen. Okay, so not just one particular shaitan, every kind of shaitan that you can imagine, from the jinn and the ins, that would bring harm to me, my religion, or lead me away from truth. Okay, it's supposed to be lead. So lead me away from the truth. Okay, so essentially, subhanAllah, you have one enemy, which is your true enemy, and his sole job, his only job, is to take you away from Islam and to make you die upon kufr. Okay, that is his greatest mission. Okay, that is the greatest mission of shaitan, and anything that shaitan does, from evil, from black magic, from making kufr trivial, to make it less sensitive in the ummah by the use of social media, for example, making innovative practices in the religion to be the norm, right? Spreading corruption, all of those things, right? Whether it's to spread blatant kufr, whether it is to support his allies and his tawaghit, from his false idols, from the jinn and the ins, and the objects like stones and fire and so on, all of these things. And then lesser so the bid'ah, the innovations in the deen, and evil practices like the indecency that is apparent on social media and TV and so on and so forth. All of those things, so making zina apparent, making murder and killing, making that trivialized in the eyes of people, right? Spread of hate crime, for example. All of these things, they're just tools. They're just means to an end, and that is to take you individually, each and every one of you, away from Islam at the time of your death. Okay? If someone is saved from the shaitan at the time of their death, they are the ones who are truly saved. They are the ones who are truly deserving of the title of Al-Muflihun. They are the ones who have truly succeeded in this life and the next. Whereas anyone who is not able to save himself from the shaitan in his last breath, at the time of his last breath, subhanAllah, they will be from the khasirin. Okay, they will be from the losers, subhanAllah. Okay, so ta'awudh is essentially your biggest weapon against the biggest enemy that Allah has created against you. Okay, and this enemy is multifaceted. It comes to you in many shapes and forms, and you must protect yourself from it. And you should teach the children when they get afraid at night, or when they feel afraid from the dark, when they get scared from anyone, to say A'udhu Billah. Okay, to say A'udhu Billah. And this is from the tarbiyah of the children, that you teach them to not be scared of the shayateen. Okay, to not be scared of the ghosts. To not be afraid of anyone. They must only fear Allah Azza wa Jal. This is from the tarbiyah that Islam teaches us. Okay, so we must all understand this tarbiyah of Islam, that it teaches its believers that we must always make isti'adha or ta'awudh our greatest weapon. Okay, so a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, or just a'udhu billah, or in other of its variations, as we'll see in a second, inshallah. All of these statements in various forms, they do one thing: to protect you from your greatest enemy, which is a shaitan. Is everyone clear so far? From the tarbiyah of ourselves, of our families, of our children, everyone must be brought upon the tarbiyah of al-isti'adha. Okay, tarbiyah upon isti'adha and ta'awudh. Constant ta'awudh from Allah Azza wa Jal. From every single thing. I mean, we do say it 5 times a day in all our prayers. And in a bit, inshallah, we'll talk about the different statements of the ulama about it. Some even said that it's sunnah. It's in fact, they said it's mustahab. It's praiseworthy. It is liked for you to say A'udhu Billah in every single rak'ah. That is the predominant view in the Shafi'i school. Okay, because of the high importance of ta'awudh and the high danger from the shayateen. Okay, so shayateen from the other creations, it means everyone from the other makhluqat. Every single thing that exists apart from you has a negative evil element we call shayateen. Okay, and that could be from the men and could be from the jinn, inshallah. Tamam. طيب, how do we say ta'awudh? What are the different forms in which the ta'awudh has been narrated? So I have collected 3 different variations from the Sunnah. So the first one is the famous one that everyone knows, Bukhari. It's in Sahih Bukhari. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge with Allah from the accursed shaitan. طيب. The next variation would be أعوذ بالسميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. I take refuge in Allah. In fact, it was supposed to be أعوذ. I take refuge in the all-hearing and all-knowing from the accursed shaitan. So, excuse me for the translation, and if there are any spelling mistakes. So this is in Sunan Abi Dawud. And another variation is found in Sunan al-Hakim. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min ash-shaytanir rajim wa hamzihi wa nafthihi wa nafthihi. There are other variations that have come, like saying a'udhu billahi min ash-shaytanir rajim min hamzihi. In fact, sorry, a'udhu billahi as-sami' al-alimi. So combining these two, a'udhu billahi as-sami' al-alim. So say a'udhu billahi as-sami' al-alimi min ash-shaytanir rajim min hamzihi wa nafthihi wa nafthihi. This is, in fact, this variation is what was recited by Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah quite commonly, and other ulama have also uttered it on many occasions. I've heard personally as well from the ulama who are alive. So the asl is A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, right? And then the ulama, they use different variations, which shows us that it is allowed for you to use different wordings and put them together in the way that I've, for example, shown you. A'udhu billahi as-sami al-alimi minash shaitanir rajim min hamzihi wa nafthihi wa nafthihi. In any case, these three are mentioned as they are, as you see them, in the Sunnah, in the books of Sunnah, and you can combine all of them in this one collection, as I've recited. Allah a'udhu billahi as-sami al-alimi min ash-shaytanir rajim min hamzihi wa nafthihi wa nafthihi. Okay, so you can say this in these, and you can also just say a'udhu billah. Okay, a'udhu billah. Tamam. This is something that we must learn and we must teach our children, especially our children, okay, so that they are not afraid of dark, they're not afraid of any ghosts or jinn or shayateen and so on and so forth. In fact, as a point of a fun anecdote, my wife, she taught our daughter, whenever you feel afraid of the shaitan, just say after saying A'udhu Billah, to say to him, run away you shaitan, I'll hit you on the face, something like that, something along those lines. So like she actually taught our daughter those words. That way she feels a bit more empowered, I would say. Alhamdulillah. So you can inculcate these kinds of things in your children, especially the case that Allah Azza wa Jal is the ultimate protector. And if you say A'udhu Billah, the children must believe that Allah will protect you, inshallah. Okay, so this is part of the tarbiyah of Islam. Tamam. Right. So this is the crux of our lesson today, inshallah. Before we can jump into the actual meanings of ta'awudh, A'udhu Billah, and what does a shaitan mean, what does a rajim mean, and so and of course the other variations of nafthihi, hamzihi wa nafthihi wa nafkhih, these words, all of the meanings of each of these individual words, we must firstly learn about the basics of the obligation of uttering a ta'awudh in different scenarios. I've listed 3 different scenarios in front of you, inshallah, as you can all see. You can think about other scenarios, but these 3 generally sum up the need for reciting a ta'awudh and different places in which you would recite a ta'awudh. Tamam? Right. So there are 3 scenarios. Either you're reading Quran generally, not inside the prayer, you're not reading an Islamic text where an ayah is quoted, for example. You're just reading the Quran. You want to read the Quran, right? And even when an ayah appears inside an Islamic text, what do? So the hukm of it is that it is sunnah to say ta'awudh at least once when you start reciting the Quran in a majlis. And so it is mustahab because it is sunnah. It is mustahab. Mustahab means it is praiseworthy. Allah Azza wa Jal, it's not obligatory in the sense that if you leave it, you'll be accounted for, you'll be held accountable, and you'll be sinning if you left it. Rather, it is an obligation of a lesser degree, where if you did it, inshallah, you will become from the muqarrabeen, you will become from those who are close to Allah, and Allah will love you, and Allah Azza wa Jal will guide your heart, and He will grant you more nur, and so on and so forth. But Allah Azza wa Jal will not hold you accountable and punish you if you left it. So it is definitely mustahab and the sunnah of the Prophet and the Sahaba to read A'udhu Billah when reciting the Quran. Some ulama, they said that it is wajib to at least say ta'awudh before reading the Quran. In any case, we'll talk about this in a second, inshallah. Right. The second scenario is before reciting Al-Fatiha in the prayer. Okay, so everyone of course knows that when you recite your Fatiha, when you start your prayer, any prayer, after the dua, the initial dua, right? The dua that you recited, it can be different. There are different duas. For example, after you've said those initial duas, you need to start reciting Fatiha. And before you recite Fatiha, before you say Bismillah, you say A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, right? What is the hukm of it? If you left reciting, or if you forgot to recite the ta'awudh before you read al-Fatiha in the prayer, is your salah invalid? Is your salah unaccepted? Or what's the hukm? So this is an important discussion, inshallah, we'll have in a second. So the hukm, just to briefly give you the hukm first, the ruling of it. Again, it is sunnah and it is mustahab. It is the sunnah of the Prophet, and it is praiseworthy for you to recite the ta'awudh in the salah, at least in the beginning. طيب. And it is definitely disliked to leave it, because the Prophet always recited the ta'awudh in the beginning. Khair? So it is definitely disliked to leave it. Likewise for the previous scenario. طيب. The third scenario would be before reading any ayah in any given Islamic literature or beginning a dars. Okay. Before reading any ayah in any given Islamic literature, that's one. Or beginning a dars. Like beginning a dars as in, even if it's not reading an ayah, just you're starting a dars, and you want, like, what should you do? Should you just start with Bismillah, or should you say A'udhu Billah? Right, so as far as beginning a dars is concerned, then it is mustahab, inshallah, because you're entering a state of ibadah, and you should seek refuge from the shaitan, and so it is a praiseworthy thing, a good thing to do, which is understood from the general principles of the Sharia. طيب. What if an ayah comes inside a given Islamic literature, right, an Islamic text that is again included in the first scenario that we gave? The sunnah. It is sunnah and it is mustahab, and it is disliked to leave reciting A'udhu Billah at least once when reading the ayat in the Quran. For example, you pick up any Islamic text, it will definitely have multitudes of ayat and ahadith quoted as evidences, for example. So you should at least say A'udhu Billah at least once, and then read the ayah, and then continue reading as much as you want from the book, inshallah, and so on and so forth. But it is not something which is stated in the sunnah or the sharia that it will be makruh, that Allah Azza wa Jalla will dislike it if you left reciting A'udhu Billah. It's from the general principle of the sharia that you do it. It is mustahab, but there's no evidence from the sunnah where you must say A'udhu Billah before you start giving a dars, for example, and you must keep reciting A'udhu Billah in every single ayah if you're reading Islamic text, for example. Right? You just do it once, inshallah it will suffice, and so on and so forth. So it is definitely mustahab, but not wajib. And likewise, it is not something which is makruh like the other cases. طيب. Now we can have a detailed discussion on the actual hukm of it. Of course, I don't expect anyone to know these Islamic terms of being mustahab and makruh. I've tried to translate it for you. Mustahab is something which is from hub. Hub is to love something, right? So something which is loved, something which is liked. And makruh is from karaha. Karaha means something which is despised, right? So it's makruh, i.e. it is despised. Okay, so something which is despised is makruh, and something which is loved is mustahab. طيب, inshallah. So just keep those definitions in mind for the word mustahab and makruh. Of course, we are studying, inshallah. So not every term will be given as a definition. You must learn to just absorb things as you go, and of course these things will repeat themselves again and again and again. So you will definitely over time internalize them. طيب, I've mentioned an ayah here. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. From Surah Al-Nahl, it says, فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. Okay, now this evidence is primarily used by all the ulama to discuss the actual hukm of reciting ta'awudh before reading the Quran. So we're talking about the first two cases. Okay, whenever you read the Quran, you seek Allah's refuge from the accursed shaitan. طيب. You must see the difference. I've used different translations here, but inshallah you'll see how the expelled from his mercy, the accursed, all of those things, inshallah, those meanings will come together, inshallah, when we explain the word al-rajim later. But anyway, coming back to the point, this ayah, Surah Nahl, is a primary evidence for both the camps. Now, the reason why there is a difference of opinion, some ulama, they say it is obligatory to recite the ta'awudh before you read the Quran, and others say no, it is sunnah. Okay, why do ulama like the great tabi'i like Imam Ata ibn Abi Rabah, Sufyan al-Thawri, Imam al-Awza'i, and latecomers like Imam Ibn Hazm al-Andalusi, for example, a great number of ulama, they held it to be obligatory, not just sunnah and mustahab, something liked, but rather obligatory for you to read the ta'awudh. And of course, a lot even the ulama who are in the camp of sunnah and mustahab, they say to be on the safe side, you should at least say a'udhu billah once. In any case, why do they hold this opinion? Based on this ayah, it says فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ, whenever you read the Quran, when you read the Quran, right? فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ, it's a command. You seek refuge from Allah. Whenever you read the Quran, seek refuge from Allah Azza wa Jal, from the shaitan al-rajim. So the usul, generally, the asl is that any command verb that comes in the Sharia, any verb that is used to command something, the asl is, the principal ruling of that would be that it is obligatory. That is the principle. Anything that is stated as a command verb, as a fi'l amr, its asl, its principal ruling would be of an obligation. Okay, not of something which is mustahab. Okay, something which is not obligatory. That is the asl. Okay, so staying on that asl, it makes very clear sense that why, according to this ayah, it would be obligatory for you to recite ta'awudh or isti'adha before you read the Quran. Okay, in the prayer or generally in reading the Quran. Okay, so that is the primary reason why they base this obligation essentially, and that is one opinion. And that is a lot of ulama from the senior tabi'een all the way down to today's day. People hold this opinion. طيب. The second opinion, which is essentially the majority opinion, held by the school of thought of Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah, all of these three different schools, their predominant opinion of this issue is that it is sunnah, mustahab, but not obligatory. Okay. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, before I read to you the statement of Imam Shafi'i himself, Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, he mentioned that indeed this ta'awudh is not an obligation. It is sunnah for anyone that recites the Quran, whether in his prayer or otherwise. It is ruled sunnah to recite it for every raka'ah of prayer in our school of thought, in our opinion. Okay, so of course this is his school, that you should read it in every single raka'ah. We don't have any clear evidence specifically saying that you should read ta'awudh in every single raka'ah. If you read it once, inshallah it will suffice. But this is a specific thing to their school of thought. But generally he says that it is mustahab. Okay. He also mentioned that it is sunnah for someone after takbiratul ihram, after the first takbir of the salah, to recite the iftitah, either the first dua that you recite. Then he recites a ta'awudh, and then he should keep his voice down while reciting the ta'awudh and so forth. And then he says, and it is sunnah to recite ta'awudh in every raka'ah according to our madhab. Okay, and reciting it in the first raka'ah is a greatly encouraged action. So in any case, so he's essentially telling you the summary of his view. Imam Shafi'i, is he gives his complete sort of reasoning behind it. He says, rahimahullah, he said, if someone leaves the recitation of isti'adha, if someone left reciting a ta'awudh before reading the Quran or in the salah, because of his forgetfulness or ignorance or on purpose as well, it is not necessary for him to repeat his salah or perform the sajda of a sahu, the sajda of forgetfulness. Okay? And then he says, and I dislike anyone that purposefully leaves it. Okay, so this is from where the makruh ruling is coming from. It is makruh to leave it and mustahab to do it, not obligatory. Okay? And then he says, after saying that I dislike anyone that purposefully leaves it, he says, and I'm inclined towards someone that if he left it in his first rak'ah, to recite it in the following rak'at. So at least he fulfills the sunnah. Indeed, the only reason that is stopping me from commanding someone to repeat and recite the isti'adha is because the Prophet ﷺ taught the valid conditions of the prayer, and he did not state the recitation of isti'adha or even iftitah as a condition of the salah. Okay, that this shows that leaving isti'adha would impair someone's prayer but not invalidate it, essentially. Right? So we learn from this that Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah is basically telling you that if the Prophet ﷺ had intended, or if this ayah, as we see on the screen, if this ayah intended for you to definitely read it, and if you don't read it you are sinning, then the Prophet ﷺ would have taught us the ta'awudh as a condition of the prayer. But the Prophet ﷺ, he never did so. He never did. And this reasoning is strong, inshallah, and it is the truth in this matter. So this is essentially the obligation of uttering and reciting a ta'awudh. Okay, inshallah. Allahu Akbar. Now, Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, he never mentioned to recite a ta'awudh in every single rak'ah as Imam Nawawi did. It is only a latecomer view in the school of thought itself. In fact, one of the ulama of the Shafi'iyya, the Shafi'i school of thought, Dr. Mustafa al-Bugha, he said the purpose of reciting a ta'awudh for every rak'ah is to separate the recitation of the first and the second rak'ah. But again, this is just ijtihad from himself. There's no such evidence to support this kind of reasoning. So we'll conclude this section with the statement of Imam al-Tabari rahimahullah in his famous tafsir al-Tabari. And tafsir al-Tabari essentially is the al-Kutub fi tafsir. It is the mother book of all tafasir. Okay, in terms of its how it heavily depends on the tafsir of the Sahaba and the early generations. And Imam al-Tabari, he's an imam of tafsir himself, right? He's considered to be a hujjah within himself. Okay, so he says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the tafsir of this ayah, فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. He says Allah Azza wa Jal subhanahu wa ta'ala, his command here is not in the form of an obligation. The commandment is an announcement, as in Allah is telling you something. It's a khabar. It's Allah is telling you to seek Allah's refuge, not as a command but rather an announcement. Okay, and it is ruled as a sunnah, as something which is mustahab, not as an obligation. The reason is there is no differing opinion from Islamic scholars that someone that leaves the recitation of ta'awudh before or after reciting the Quran has left or neglected any of his obligation. So since there is a lack of evidence, there is no evidence to say that someone who does not recite ta'awudh or leaves it off, that they have committed something haram or they've neglected an obligation. Since there is no evidence to suggest that, we understand this ayah to mean it is a sunnah, something which is mustahab, and leaving it would be makruh, but it is not of the nature of an obligation. Tamam, inshallah. So this is so far with regards to the meaning of a ta'awudh, the ways of uttering a ta'awudh, and the obligation of uttering a ta'awudh. Tamam, inshallah. So with this, we will end our recording for today's session, inshallah. And if there are any questions, we can take them after this, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And otherwise, I will see everyone in our next session, inshallah.